Oh, yes. This is the Hardcore Marketing Show. I'm Casey Cheshire, your host for this epic journey. And today's show, sponsored by Cheshire Impact, on a mission to help people maximize their use of Pardot and Salesforce. CheshireImpact.com. Bam. And we're live. And I am excited and honored and just blown out of my skull here to introduce today's guest. And as I mention more and more things about him, you may start putting the pieces together. Editor at a thing called chiefmartech.com. You may have seen a particular image. Yes.
Yes, that's too.
Yes. VP of Platform Ecosystem at HubSpot.
Yep, that's 3.
Probably heard of those. Author, blogger, thought leader, Scott Brinker. How are you, sir?
I'm good. How are you? I'm getting over a bit of a cold, so forgive me with that.
You know, no one would even notice. No one,
Okay.
no one even knows. But no, you look great. So if this is you sick, what do you like when you're well?
Well, not dead yet. That's what I say.
Right? Well, man, I'm so glad you're here. The theme was around marketing strategy and technology and how those can come together for better or worse, and kind of distilling all the madness. And so what I want to do here, this is heavy. I'm going to pass you. This is Thor's hammer. So here, take Thor's hammer.
All right.
Now, smash for me some kind of bogus myth, or maybe some just strategy you've been hearing, or just some things that have been out there that you just want to set the record straight. Like, marketers, pay attention. Scott's about to smash something.
Wow. Man, there are so many myths
Yes.
we can smash. All right. Let me just take a couple here. Get us
Okay.
started. One is, I'm going to start with what you just talked about here, like technology and strategy, because there's this myth that it's one or the other. You'll hear people say like, oh, figure out your strategy and then go get the right technology to fill it.
Yeah.
Or if you're a really bad person, you've gone out and you've bought your technology and now you try to figure out what a strategy for that is. This whole dichotomy between those two things drives me nuts, because we are living in a world of continuous change and continuous innovation.
True.
So I'm the first to say that ultimately what matters for your business is your strategy. You have to get that right.
Right.
But we have to recognize that new technology, new innovations can actually inform what's possible with our strategy. So rather than that sort of, chicken and egg, is it the strategy first or the technology first? Really like to encourage people to just step back from that dichotomy and say, listen, how do we rethink our strategy, leveraging all the possibilities we can find about technology for our customers, our business, our segments? All right, so that's myth number 1.
Oh, hold on. We got to deconstruct this, because
Okay.
I'm guilty of this one. I've been trying to teach people, because what I hate seeing is, you get a new tool, marketing automation, both dear to our hearts. You get a new tool and then you use it like some freemium software. You don't use it, right? You invest all this money and then you don't use it. So I've been sort of talking to people about doing strategy and then process and then technology. But what you just said is true. Strategy is informed by technology. And I think specifically about marketing automation, because a lot of times people are in the old strategy. They're in the batch and blast mode. And then they get some tool that can nurture, and they still use it like batch and blast. So they haven't updated their strategy. So how do I resolve all these things?
Exactly. Well, again, this is why, instead of thinking it being like one leading to the other or vice versa, I like to think of this as more of a cycle,
Okay.
right? I mean, this is one of the reasons I advocate for someone in the marketing department to take on that role of like head of marketing technology, head of marketing ops. And part of their job is to keep their finger on the pulse of the technology that's changing, that's relevant to your customers. Now, I can give you a great example. I mean, things, the explosion recently of chatbots, are a great thing. This is like a whole new...
They're everywhere.
They are. But it's interesting, like a year or two ago, they weren't.
No.
And so some companies realized that this actually was a new channel that was opening up to engage with their customers. Some got the technology, didn't really know what they were doing with the strategy.
Right.
It did not go well. Others were like, hey, wow, we can actually use this as a new way of engaging with our prospects and customers. And that technology informed a strategy that then they implemented, as you would say, right? Then the process and then the actual technical implementation. But I know there were a lot of companies that were like, oh no, all right, we don't want to be distracted by what's going on over there. We're still trying to, figure out what our strategy is for email. Don't get me wrong, the strategy for email is still important, but it's like,
Yeah.
if you put blinders on for the way technology is changing in marketing today, you're going to get left behind.
Right. Right. So when you do strategy first, you got to inform it. It can't be in its own little what you did 20 years ago, how you thought you hacked Google with your bad SEO and your print mail. you gotta update. You gotta stay with it. How do you do that? That is kind of like the next question. Okay, Scott, well, how do I do that? How do I stay informed? There's so much.
There is, and so it's like, yeah, the only thing that's, well, all right, so shiny object syndrome is bad. I'll be the first one to say that, right? If
Amen.
you're just chasing something, because, oh, well, that sounded cool, yeah, you can waste a lot of time and money.
Yeah.
On the other hand, I guess it's just that other end of the spectrum where you say, like, listen, I'm just going to put blinders on. I don't care about any of these newfangled technologies. You kids get off of my lawn, that sort of stuff. Like, that's where I think people can go too far in the other direction. So how do you balance these two? Again, this is one of the things I feel this role of a marketing technology, marketing ops leader has to take responsibility for. And I think of it, roughly speaking, as the 80-20 rule. That
Okay.
really 80% of the effort of a marketing technology, marketing ops leader should be focused on the present day operations of how do we make this stuff work well, how do we make it better, how are we instrumenting this stuff to know that it's truly delivering the sort of value to our customers and our organization that we expected from it. It's a very practical, important hands-on role.
Right.
But I do think about 20% of that person's time needs to be looking at the trends of what is emerging, what's coming up, what's coming
Right.
around the corner, what are things that we might want to start to factor into piloting. Not every new shiny object that passes, your field of vision, but at least, those that start to sound like, hey, wait, actually, reading a little bit about this actually sounds incredibly relevant, to our
Right.
customers. And so even if we're not ready to invest in this today, it's probably worth me taking a couple hours here to understand what this is and make sure there's some sort of marker to be like, all right, I'm going to come back in a quarter. I'm going to come back in 2 quarters and check in on this. And at the point in time, it starts to cross that line where this is going to be relevant to our strategy. They can really come and surface that to the, head of marketing. Just, let's get a pilot program. Let's get this part of our overall strategy.
Test it out. Being aware. I love that you mentioned it's the responsibility and the fact that, look, it's not the majority of it, but you got to keep something in there as a reminder that it's a part of what you're doing is looking around the corner of or not even around, what's coming up over the hill. Like, what are we seeing finally emerging? Because chat, we mentioned earlier, man, I used that 15 years ago. Yeah, I used it on some e-commerce thing. People, I have a question. Do I get shipping? Yes, you do. Here's free shipping. They bought, right? We got a little ding sound, cha-ching. So they made a purchase. So that was like, I don't know, a long time ago. But you're right. It changed and morphed, and eventually different tools are coming out where it's got reinvented. But you got to be aware. So I mean, in my head, I'm asking you this question: how do you spend that 20%? Any recommendations for what they're doing to learn that? Because there's a lot of stuff out there, probably a lot of noise, but you want to be able to get a chance to just sort of see it all. What do you recommend?
Yeah, well, I mean, certainly you follow a set of publications, people that you trust. I mean, I think,
Right.
The greatest thing for all of us in this field, because it's changing so rapidly, is to find other peers that we relate to,
Yeah, that's a good point.
and that the way in which, we keep our ears open. What are they saying? What are they running into? I mean, I'll confess this is a little self-promotional of me to make this suggestion, but I mean, one of the reasons we run the MarTech conference is because I think
Yes.
there actually is a really good rationale for people to get out of the office and go mingle with another set of people who are in their kind of profession, but at a variety of different businesses. And, you know, some of that's listening to sessions and what people share as case studies up on the stage.
Right.
But to be honest, a lot of it is just who you meet over having a beer, you know, when you're like meeting your counterpart who's working almost the exact same situation you're doing in some other company, you know, on the other side of the country. You know, there's chance to like, oh, hey, you know, I've been hearing more about, you know, these chatbots, or, oh, yeah, you know, this, we don't have an Alexa skill. I mean, should we be having like representation of these things? Oh, yeah, we experimented with that. This is what, I mean, that sort of exchange, I feel, is where the real information happens in this community, because you're right, there is just so much noise out there that if you're simply trying to pay attention to, you know, I'm a vendor too, but, you know, I mean, the vendor community as a whole, we produce an ungodly amount of content out there, and it's just impossible to, like, you know, go through all of it. So you have to have a peer network that can help you navigate it and narrow it down.
Yeah. So I got peer network. That's a solid one. The MarTech conference is that, you have 2 this year? This coming up at least?
Yeah, we do one in the spring in the Bay Area. That's coming up April 3rd through 5th. And I'll have a special discount code for your listeners.
Oh, snapper.
I'll give that to you now, actually. MarTech VIP. So capital M, capital T, capital VIP. And that'll get you 20% off all access tickets.
Awesome.
All right. Yeah,
awesome. That's pay.
Yeah, okay. But you have to stick around for the rest of the podcast.
Yeah. Right? Oh, we should have given them half of it. And told, you know,
yeah, like the ripped dollar bill.
Yeah. yeah, like a timeshare. You get all these amazing things at the end of our presentation. Okay, so MarTech conference. So there's I'm looking at it too. We'll put it in the show notes. There's an East, that's in September 16, 18. There's a West, April 3rd to 5th. Awesome. And we got the VIP code. Thank you for that, by the way.
Oh yeah, no.
So conferences, and you brought it up. It's like, of course, I love just walking around, you know, the booths and just seeing what kind of, even the small ones, because sometimes the small ones are the people who are just figuring it out. Maybe don't have like super funding yet. And then also who's spending millions of dollars, right? Who's got some huge VC funding going on. It's just kind of good to, you let it influence you, not even have a path, just sort of roam around. I mean, I did that at Dreamforce, also Inbound. I loved some of the smaller vendor categories, talking to people. Sometimes it's actually the founder that's there at the booth because, hey, grind, right? Like be there and make it happen. And you learn from them what's possible. And like, I didn't know that was possible. You really, that's our new technology. You know, it's amazing.
Yep, I can't tell you that. I mean, so this is my life. I live and breathe MarTech, and I swear not a week goes by that I don't discover something like, oh my goodness, I had no idea that was possible. That is like seriously cool. So yeah, there's a lot to be discovered.
Well, I'm going to have to ask you about seriously cool in just a second, because it'd be great to know what you have recently found is seriously cool. But I'm just going to finish off on that last thing. So 80-20, 20%, you got to do that research or be aware, be in the loop. Peer groups are great for that. That's how I get my news usually. Whoever on my Facebook, feed shares something dramatic happening in the world. I'm like, okay, it got through my filter, it must be important. But peer group, peer networks, the conference, the MarTech conferences, peer conferences. Anything else you think of? I mean, obviously Chief MarTech site as well is probably something to stay tuned to.
Well, yeah, I mean, again, I assume it's like your listeners on this podcast. It's like, you find the affinity, with the folks that you like the way they are curating these ideas, right. and you listen and you read, and I think the value of people who are really helping to condense that massive stuff that's happening out there in the world into some reasonable subset that you can consume is just so valuable these days. So yeah, find the folks you love. Beautiful. And listen, read.
I pulled it up. It's Chief Mar and then Tech without an H, TEC, right?
Yep. There's a silly story behind that, but
what's the silly story? Tell me. Somebody wanted $1 million from you or something?
This is one of these things why, like, I work in technology, not branding. Right. This has been like 10 years ago, and the term MarTech didn't exist. And so the closest thing I had ever seen was people referring to MarCom, as in marketing communications,
Yes.
and it was,
Back in the day.
yep, and it was a 6-letter abbreviation, MARCOM. And so I thought, oh, well, MarTech, we could have like a 6-letter MARTEC.
Yep.
And only a complete idiot would think of like abbreviating tech to TEC instead of TECH, but you're
Right.
looking at them. So by the time I realized otherwise, the domain was not available. Or,
Are you serious?
so, yeah.
You should go, send some
Oh,
some
it was the
over
Twitter
there.
handle too. That was it. It's like, yeah. I mean, it's like, rebranding in today's world is tough. So now it's actually quirky, right?
That is
That's what I
quirky.
tell myself. Yeah, but
Did you get it though? I just followed it. I think it went to. Did it go to you?
on Twitter?
No, on the
Yeah.
.com.
Oh, yeah. I think I finally got the .com. But
Yeah,
then I
you
didn't
got it
have the
now. But
Twitter.
now everybody knows it as TEC, right? So you
Yeah.
forwarded it over to the.
Yeah, I
It's
kind of
very
messed
military.
myself up.
You did. It's like very military, like syscom add 12, like the warfighter game where you're gonna shoot missiles out of your MarTech.
I hadn't thought of it that way, but if I had, that would have probably been another reason I would have done it.
It's hardcore marketing, man. That's where the mind goes. But okay, so this makes a lot of sense. You're staying aware of all these tools. Now, I think this gets into something else, that you're seeing all these tools, and there's that search for the one tool, like the one ring that rules them all. You see that a lot, and is there one?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest myths that's been persistent in MarTech for a long time, it's just now really starting to get shattered, was this belief that, oh, I either had to choose a suite, so I'm going to go to one vendor and I'm going to get all my software from them. It's just the suite, everything.
Yeah.
HubSpot, give me everything. Salesforce,
Right.
give me everything.
Sure.
And, whoever it was, a lot of major companies tried that strategy for many years. And then your only other alternative was, the complete opposite of the spectrum, best of breed, which is to say, okay, well, you can go out and get whatever you want, but good luck.
Yeah, good luck integrating.
Figure out how to connect all these pieces. And so the thing is, that was somewhat the state of the universe here, I don't know, 4 years ago, 3 years ago. But now it's just not, because all of these major vendors, Salesforce was always a pioneer in this. Adobe, Oracle, HubSpot, IBM, SAP, all of them have basically opened up these APIs, and they've really worked to develop these platform ecosystems where third-party developers, other companies can, whatever specialized technology they create. Oh, okay, I've got a tool for influencer marketing. Fantastic. Be able to plug that into your primary marketing platform, where you don't have to be the poor person like connecting all the wires and tubes yourself.
Yeah.
The companies have worked behind the scenes to make that integration really smooth. And so instead of like suite versus best of breed, I think we've really smashed through that dichotomy. And we're now at a place where, you can have the best of both worlds. And actually, one of the things you mentioned where you're talking about like walking through a conference,
Yeah.
you're a really small vendor who has like a super innovative like idea, in a world where it was just going to be the big suites, none of those companies would come into existence, right? They just wouldn't be able to compete up against, like $100 billion juggernaut, but in a platform ecosystem environment, actually those companies have an opportunity to thrive, because they can create these integrations to, the major platforms and then make it really super easy. Oh, well, what are you running? Are you running HubSpot? Are you running Salesforce? Are you running Adobe? Great. We plug right into that, and it makes it easier for marketers to take a chance on a smaller vendor for a more specialized piece. The risk is less, the cost is less. And so I actually think this is actually starting to generate a kind of a new generation of MarTech innovation that revolves around these major platform ecosystems.
Yeah,
I'm biased here.
We're
part of what I do for a living too. So
no worries, but it's true, because God forbid you had to go find someone to integrate thing A with thing B, and different vocab. Maybe they don't even integrate. You have to go hire some secret squirrels to try to hack it. And then if A or B changes any of their thing, that whole integration may go down, and it may need a complete overhaul. It's that custom integration world is just gross. So you're right. That platform play has really evolved. And I guess it's good for the business, but it's also good for all the partners and all the like you said, the smaller plays, and rather than having the big business try to reinvent things, which they're never good at, right?
Yeah.
My joke, you don't have to comment on anything, but my joke is always when Microsoft buys something, I'm like, I say a prayer for it because I'm like, it's doomed. It's too big, too big. But by the way, LinkedIn, they haven't killed LinkedIn. So thank you, Microsoft. You somehow haven't ruined that yet. Though you've messed with the job posting feature, and I'm mad at you. But other than that, but talk about innovation. Innovation can come from these small hit teams usually. And so to enable them to be a part of your overall system, you're right. It allows them to build their own value, potentially break through while still adding to the overall picture.
Yeah, it's a great book here. I'm going to just bring this
Oh,
up
yeah.
to the camera. This Platform Revolution by Jeffrey Parker and a couple other folks. Sold like something like 150,000 copies of this. I mean, this is not unique to marketing. This is
Right.
like a whole new revolution that the cloud world has brought us, where these things don't have to live in isolated silos in data centers.
Sure.
They're all up in the cloud. They all now work internally as well as externally now with APIs. And simply by having these vendors, both the platforms, and the ecosystem participants, invest a little bit of work behind the scenes in making sure these handshakes between them are smooth, and reliable, man, that just opens up so much creative possibility for marketers. So it's a wonderful time.
I think to that point, when marketing can be best when the tech gets out of the way. Some of my favorite platforms, favorite tools, you almost forget you're using them. In the past, and you mentioned things that have the word sweet in them, and I had one that rhymed with bet, and it had the word sweet in it, and the tool was the job as a marketer, right? The tool was, I'm going to spend a day creating this email, and my predecessor has created me like a 3-page noted process on how to do this. Okay, select this list from this thing and then go over here, and it was complicated and you had to refresh this, and then the whole day was the tactical software effort. But I think the better platforms figured out to get out of the way. So it's not about them, it's about getting the result and getting the ROI. So you're right. I see it improves for everyone now. Instead of being about the tech, it's about the result, and all these upstarts can kind of come and frolic.
Yeah. And, again, to be fair, we're not in nirvana yet. We've all got a long way to go. We can make this a lot better, a lot easier, a lot smoother. But directionally, if I look at where the industry is headed today versus where it was 4 years ago, I feel we are on the right track,
Right.
to make, to get the best of both worlds, right? People want that stability, that foundation that they can rely on, but they also want the ability to tap these latest innovations or these more specialized capabilities they're really important to their specific business. Marketers, I always think back to that iconic Apple Super Bowl ad about the 1984
They're
launch.
smashing the thing.
Yeah, right. I mean,
Yeah.
that is quintessential, marketing worldview, right? Is
Totally.
marketers don't want their company to be doing the exact same thing, the exact same way that every
Right.
other company is, right? We're always looking for the edge. We're always looking for some sort of way to differentiate. And that's always going to push us to explore new technologies that we
Right.
can use to get those advantages.
Right. Yeah. Not marching in line. I mean, that commercial, people haven't seen it. If you're too young to have seen that or even seen it in school, you should go. It's what, 1984? Is that the
Yeah.
commercial?
So
Yeah.
1984 won't be 1984. Yes.
1984. Folks should just go look this thing up because it's fantastic. They've got this, like, I don't know what you'd call it, one of those worlds where everything's control and everyone's the same and is roar. And then this gal is the Olympic champion's running and chased by guards, and then she smashes stuff, and it's like, yeah, and that same sentiment carries through. I love it. I don't even know how we got onto that, but that is a great image. That is a great image.
It was a good commercial. I think it came out about 10 years before I was born, but I've heard of it.
See, now you're dating yourself, sir. I wasn't old enough to watch TV when it came out. I'll put that, but I was around.
Oh wait, no, I got the directions confused. It happens at my age.
Other way. So does this? Because I know there's that topic that you're really interested in seeing it develop in the marketing world around the citizen marketer, the citizen integrator, and does the platform enable that? Could you talk about what that is? Sort of define that citizen.
Yeah, so this is a really fascinating trend for me. In fact, I want to go back a bit. Like it used to be, if you wanted to do anything with technology, you had to turn it over to the IT department, right? There were specialists, they were, engineers, they were enterprise architects. And if you wanted something in marketing, take a ticket, wait in the deli line.
Yep.
IT will get to you. And one of the interesting transitions that happened here over the past 5 years is we started to get this notion of marketing technologists, people who were technically savvy enough they could actually work with a lot of these tools, particularly the cloud-based SaaS tools. Again, marketing automation systems, CRMs. They didn't have to be in IT. They knew enough about IT to be able to respect, whatever sort of governance principles IT would put in place, but they could take on the bulk of the operational work. And so this really led to, the heyday of marketing technology and marketing operations as a function in marketing. Well, what I think is we're actually continuing that trend even further, which is stuff that we used to have to turn to, marketing technologists to do. Now the tools are getting to a place where actually regular marketers can do a lot. And we see this across the citizen labels sometimes apply to this, like citizen data scientists. If you're, a true data scientist, they work with Python and R and, they go into all these, there's a whole discipline there. But you can actually get a lot of business users that, given a tool like Tableau or a tool like Looker, they can actually, through a really simple interface, do a lot of this exploration of the data themselves. They can look for interesting patterns. They can have hypotheses. They can check things about it. And it might not go as super rigorous as a true, data scientist would, but in a lot of times, what the business user needs is they need speed. They need to be able to I've got a question I'm curious about. I want the answer to this. And if I have to take a ticket and wait for, someone to get back to me in 3 months, forget it. By then the question is irrelevant. I moved on. But if I can pull up this tool myself, and get actually a pretty good answer. If it becomes something that, all right, I want to dig in deeper, then it's worth bringing in more of an expert. Okay, great. But a lot of time that, I'd say, 80-20 rule, right? The vast majority, these questions, if the business user, if the marketer could answer them themselves, that'd be great. And so that's with citizen data scientists. We see the same thing with, this is a fun one, citizen integrators. So again, we were talking about integrating these different cloud tools. And it used to be not long ago that if you wanted to integrate a bunch of different tools together, oh my goodness, enterprise architect from IT to come on board. But now they've got tools like Zapier. You see, right? This really super friendly tool that, frankly, any business user can sign up for and say, okay, all these different cloud software products connect through Zapier. And so the business user can just go into Zapier and say, oh, when a lead comes in on this Gravity form on my WordPress website, I want to take that data, I want to pull it in my marketing automation system here, I want to replicate this to the CRM. If it qualifies this way, I want to trigger a message in Slack. Bam!
No code.
No code, no Bachelor of Science.
No Java.
Exactly. Another example would be citizen graphic designers, right? Again, another one of these things where if you wanted a graphic, something that looked really good as a marketer, and you weren't a graphic designer yourself,
that's me.
Adobe Photoshop, me too, Danger Will Robinson. You kind of were stuck. You had to wait until you could, get someone who could do it. But then you look at tools like Canva, that anyone could sign up, and be like, oh, actually, I want to pull together this graphic. And again, it's not limitless the way a graphic designer would, but for 80% of the cases where a marketer just needs to get something done that looks good,
Right.
Works, you know. And so you can keep carrying this on. I mean, there's things
Oh,
like
for sure.
citizen developers, you know, that if you want to build little apps, you know, you no longer actually have to write code. You can do this
Right.
drag and drop little process, and boom, I have a little mobile app, I have a
Right.
little web app. And so I think this is a huge revolution that's underway in democratizing the sorts of things that the average marketer can do without having to wait for, you know, the experts on high to come and do it for them.
You know, so true. I remember, and I was your standard digital marketer, SEO, PPC, you know, the Google Analytics, right? Just sort of the old school. You got what you got. Or there's a kids show where they say you get what you get and you don't get upset. Well, you're always upset, but you know
That's
you didn't have
marketing.
ROI or anything, right? So and I remember when marketing automation came around and suddenly I had control of landing pages. And I know for a lot of people, a landing page was either on a CMS or, you know, this is old school kids. It could have been like HTML or something crazy, but you know, it was on some sort of platform and you can't touch that because we don't want the corporate website to go down. But then along comes marketing automation and inbound tools. And then suddenly I can control that. And rather than, you know, putting in a ticket, and eventually, I mean, even a couple of years ago, you're still putting in Jira tickets, right?
Mhm.
for some changes. But I could instead of putting a ticket in, I could go make that change, and it was live, you know, and I didn't have to, or I could update the form inside of the tool, and it would just update automatically on the site, and
Yeah.
didn't have to go change the code of the form or anything. You just did it. And to your point, that's like a citizen develop because I never needed to go change the HTML code for a form. It was just where it was at, you know. Graphic design too, so big on that. You know, where would I be without meme generators at this point? You
Yes.
know, I use them all the time, all the time. They're authorized at my company. So we first welcome someone, they get memes from day one. It's like meme.
Excellent.
But yeah, I'm not creating those myself. I'm using some, you know, some tools that allow that. So it's interesting. You mentioned that it keeps going though. You're right on the coding side with automation rules at a minimum, but there's obviously other tools where you can even create, you know, put some commands in there, simple type coding, but even just automation rules. If this happens, do this. That's
Yeah.
simple computer science, right? If then this, do this. And you're right. It keeps going. So dot, 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 where does this go? Like how far does it go and can it go? And is there an end in sight? And, or does it just keep getting easier for everyone to do everything and
Yeah. I
flowers and
think
roses?
I think we've got a long runway ahead because, again, part of it
No.
is the space in which we're working is just expanding so rapidly. You know, like a great example is all the stuff here now with like the Google Assistant and Alexa skills and,
Oh, geez.
you know, stuff like that. I mean, again, this is like a whole new channel that we're getting into.
Right.
Now I've started to see companies that are creating software that makes it super easy for like a non-programmer to create an Alexa skill, to replicate that as a Google Assistant skill, to replicate that, you know, so it works with Siri. You know, so right, we're going to see new innovations around things with, you know, it's coming eventually, right? Augmented reality, virtual reality, there'll be interesting things there. We know with the Internet of Things, this continues to, you know, step by step turn from science fiction into science reality. I mean, there's a long runway of innovations that companies are going to have. And I think just as we go down that path to empower more people throughout the organization to be able to act on opportunities within these channels, I mean, this is ultimately, this is the thing that's transformative about this whole thing. People talk about digital transformation. To me, like maybe the single greatest thing about it is the speed at which the firm can move. You know,
Right.
because when you can like go in and just fix your landing page right then and right there, bam, it's done in 3 minutes versus having to wait, God knows what, 3 days, 3 weeks.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, right? I mean, it changes the entire clock speed of how the
It
business
does.
adapts to opportunities in its market, and that's transformative.
The time, you're right. If you put calculations on that, you know, those changes are done instantly. And then your time isn't being spent doing that. I mean, you could calculate gobs and gobs of time that I spent sending those NetSuite emails out, right? It was crazy. But I think the best technology, it's getting easier and easier, and that's actually a good thing. It's getting to democratize the citizen user of tech, and you know, kudos to tech because that's what we want. It's almost like when it first came out, it was, Yeah, I always talk about marketing automation. When it first came out, you had to build your own, man. Good luck. Go get some devs, tuck them away like Amazon, tuck some devs away and build some.
Marketing automation was an oxymoron.
Yeah, like you had to create it yourself, and then Eloqua, and then which is not very easy to use. But then newer tools came along, right? And then, but the bar was set so high that they just got better and better. To your point now, where things continue to come out, and they're not going to read our minds, but maybe, right? Set up some nurture campaigns, and it's really exciting. The question I asked you earlier too was like, what's cool? What do you got your eyes on in terms of the futuristic tech that's kind of showing up across that, coming over the hill for marketing?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's funny. People often ask me when I assemble that crazy landscape graphic every year.
Do you do that by hand?
I used to
How
do
do
it
you do that?
entirely by hand.
Dang.
Recently, in these past couple years, I've now got a team that works with me, and
Yeah.
um,
In a dungeon somewhere.
yeah, I mean, had you told me when I started this project what it was going to grow into,
What
not
have the
sure.
numbers been on that real quick? So you started out, and for everyone listening, if you don't know, your head's in the sand or something, but there's this really cool graphic, Chief MarTech graphic that, industry, it shows what the different marketing tools available in different categories across the industry, just what's available, right?
Yeah.
Is that fair?
And so the first version that I did in 2011, I had something like 150 marketing technology companies. Again, across
150.
it was a lot.
So,
Social media
yeah.
marketing, website management, ad tech. In fact, everyone was like, "Oh my God, 150! That's scary. How
Yeah.
will we
It
ever
probably
keep
were like 10 pixels tall. You had plenty of room, plenty
it?"
of room on that graphic.
Yeah, and so that's over time. It went from 150 to 350 to 1,000 to 2,000 to 4,000 to 5,000.
Wow.
7,000, last year.
7,000 last year?
7,000.
Jeez. Are they all real? I think that's what people wonder too. And they say, are the logos in that thing real? And, are they just sort of like a one person app that doesn't actually, but like, is there some qualification to that? Is it really 7,000? And that's
Yeah, so we
crazy. How
look
does
at
that happen?
every single one,
Yeah,
and I can't say that there aren't a few out there that are single person shops who might be doing an amazing job.
sure.
But I mean,
Yeah,
keep in
yeah,
mind, some of these folks like Neil Patel, yeah, I mean, like, there's a bunch of solo people who have created
true.
something in this space that we love. But yeah, I'm looking for companies that, it's clear there's a real technology there. They have customers, there's references. You can go to social feeds. You can see, you know, and every year we review them, and we
Yeah,
take out the bunch that die.
sure.
Last year it was something like 5% or so that either
5% die. What is
you
that? Couple, what, 30? 30 or so?
it was at least
5%.
a few
My
hundred,
math
right?
is horrible. What is it? 5% of
All right, so let's
7,000?
see, 5 of 100, 50 of
I'm
a
gonna use my
thousand.
calculator here while you're doing that.
Yeah, so out
Oh
of
wow.
5,000, yeah, about 250, 300.
Yeah, 250, 350. Wow. So there's a chunk of them that sort of
They
evaporate.
get acquired or they go out of
Okay. Yeah,
business,
true.
or they change their business model. Maybe they go back to being a services company instead of a software company.
Right.
So there's definitely churn in the space. It's just
But growth too.
there is growth. And here's the thing, it's like it's growing for a bunch of reasons. It's growing because, first of all, the barriers to entry are essentially non-existent, right? I
Right.
mean, you can use Amazon, AWS, open source. I mean, if you have an idea
Yeah.
to create a product at this point in time, anybody can do it.
99 designs, little branding,
Yeah.
little, yeah.
Yeah, all those citizen tools, right? Now I'll use Canva, I'll create this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, there's no barriers to entry. The second thing is the space itself is still expanding. I mean, I have yet to run into a marketer who's like, we're all set. We don't have any
Mm.
problems. We don't see there's any opportunities. There's no way our life could be any better.
Right.
Pretty much every marketer I know has a list of things that they wish worked differently, or got different results,
Yeah.
or interesting new things that are opening up. And this is just food for the entrepreneurial ecosystems
Right.
in MarTech. And then, interesting, these platforms, as we talked about, are also starting to make this a little bit easier. I mean, why are there like whatever it is now, 4 million apps for the Apple iPhone? Why are
Wow.
people still making apps for the
That's a
iPhone?
lot of apps.
It's no kidding. It's a lot. And it's a long tail, right? And there's a bunch
Right.
that maybe got one install by the person's mother, you know. But still, you go through
Yeah.
the tail and in the head and in the torso and even like, the first 10,000, 20,000.
Sure.
There's a lot of really great apps. And because it's just so easy for people to say, oh, I like a note-taking app, that does this thing with dictation. I like it
Hmm.
when it works this way. Oh, I found the one that's perfect for me.
Right.
One click, it installs, it just works. You're
Magic.
good. Now again, we're not there yet in the MarTech world, but I think that's the
Close.
vision that everyone is striving for. It's like we
Sure.
want to get it so easy that you can be able to take these new innovations from small entrepreneurial startups, and plug their apps into your marketing stack with a click and start to get that benefit
Yeah.
right away.
Jeez. Jeez. It makes you wonder, what do you think about the AI? And by the way, this kind of triggers me because when I hear people using AI in a marketing sense, like guilty as charged, marketers being like, come on, guys. Like, this is not Skynet. This is not a fully, is more of the augmented intelligence or more of like the assisted intelligence as opposed to like, oh, we have a thinking computer in our SaaS app and her name is Jody. It's like that word gets so used, but I think there's still something there underneath all that.
Yeah, the funny thing is, I would bet that marketers are using AI several dozen times a day and they don't even stop to realize it.
Right.
I mean, like when you're going to frigging Google to figure out, what it is, you want to find, and it starts auto completing things for you. That's AI. I mean, this is machine learning.
Right.
I mean, everything from like, in the MarTech stacks of like, oh, well, when do we send email for the optimal time for people? Marketers don't even think about that anymore. The system does a machine learning model. It maps it out for different customers, knows when to send it. Things like lead scoring. We used to, have these very Byzantine manual rules.
Yes.
I'd say for most, B2B companies at scale at this point, they're using their marketing automation tools to do some sort of machine learning model for,
Yeah.
lead scoring, churn propensity, for existing customers. I mean, there's just a bunch of these things where it's kind of, come in
Yeah.
to our day-to-day operations. And because it isn't a big, AI personified robot
Yeah.
that we're interacting with, we don't think of it as AI, but yeah, it's actually making some real impact on the performance and optimization of marketing already.
Jeez. Jeez. Especially as you mentioned, the citizen data scientist, business analyst, like being able to, what does this actually mean? But I guess the challenge is, data in, data out. It still needs that good source data to be able to draw from things. That might
Yeah.
be one of the challenges in the future, especially with the different apps and different places, is sort of not, normalizing or making up words now, normalizing the data so that the AI can really sink its teeth in.
Yeah, and that's one of the big jobs of these platforms, right? I mean, part of it
Good
is
point.
creating
Yeah.
good UI, but I think you're absolutely right. Good platforms are going to help with that normalization of the data so that
Right.
when you connect these apps, the benefit is the apps all contribute to the sort of central data repository, but it's a two-way street. All of the apps can also then leverage that data from all of the other apps in that shared repository to be
Right.
smarter in the way that they operate. And I think when you have that, I mean, there's a bunch of advantages for it. Certainly, just the unification of your data models across the business, hugely valuable. But by having that sort of centralized platform, you can do things like good governance to make sure that, for instance, things like GDPR compliance, like you want to be
Yes.
able to do that across all of the applications that are connected to your system.
Right.
If you're doing, cleaning of data to make sure that the models that your AI machine learning algorithms are operating on or are working on good data in for good data out,
Right.
having a centralized system that can manage, that cleaning and maintenance of the data. Super, super important. So again, I don't want to make
Yeah.
it sound like this is all completely figured out yet, but
Right.
it's on its way, and it's already, some of it's here today, and you sort of play this out over the next couple years. I think it's going to be, I think it's going to really change the way in which marketers think of how they leverage technology.
I think so too. It's kind of exciting to think about. You know, sometimes we resist change. Like, could it be back in the old days? But it's just things are getting easier. But what I do love about some of these changes too, not only is it making it easier for the user, but I love how things like SEO. I was teaching a class the other day on SEO. It's easy now, right? It's like do good content. Like be helpful to your buyer. It's no longer the, oh well, you know, your keyword density here and the white text on the white background and all. It's like, no, so I don't know what you'd even give a name to that, but it's purified marketing in a sense as well. I mean, there's always going to be people figuring out how to listen to us on Alexa and all this craziness, but the idea that marketing now, it can be like, no, just be helpful to your buyer. Really, don't try to trick them with your clicking and your pop-ups and your all, like, be helpful. And I love that's kind of, it's almost, it makes you feel a bit better about being in marketing. It's kind of, it brings new life back into even that word. So you're not the trickster, you're the helper, you know?
Yeah, I think that's one of the most important things culturally that's happening in this revolution. So, I mean, what
Agreed.
started me down this path was the looking at the intermingling between the tech profession and tech community and the marketing profession, marketing community.
Sure.
Because again, like 10 years ago, 15 years ago, whew, these were like complete opposite ends of the spectrum. And it's been one of the reasons, you know, tech people avoided marketing so long was because they felt it had that reputational thing of like, oh, this is just trickery. You're just trying to
Yeah.
find the right way to spin this to like squeeze money out of someone. No, that's thank you, but no thank you. But it's interesting in the tech community, wasn't that long ago. Tech's problem was they were like, well, it just works. You know, if the user can't figure it out, it's a user problem, but it's
Right.
how it works. You
Right.
know,
It's
but
their fault.
you know, tech went through this sort of UX revolution over
Mhm.
the past 10, 15 years, where software developers really started to come to the realization that, whoa, the user experience of this stuff is where the game is at. Because if they
Yeah.
don't use it and they don't love it, my software isn't going anywhere.
Yes.
And I think this is actually now what brought the interesting intersection is you look at marketing engagement points as part of the meta user experience of how does a company engage, you know, with its customers, its prospects, its audience. And I think the key behind that is to say, how do we do a good job of this? How do we make a
Right.
great experience for our customers? And that's something that, you know, this technology talent, I think you get now a segment of it that is really passionate about it, you know. But if you start going back into the mode of like, oh, and how do we, you know, surreptitiously, you know, like, you
Yeah.
know, do this here and you know, swap in this band. You know, it's like people don't want to do that. They want to win, you know, because they
Sure.
want the best experience.
Yes, you know, in some of the social sites aside, maybe with their trickery, but at least in terms of, especially in the B2B world or SaaS, where you know your customer's trying to accomplish something. I've even seen it get cleaner on the IT side. I mean, maybe you mentioned that as well. Even IT integration software is getting easier to use and in the, you know, cloud based, and and I think that whole, I'm glad to see this thing go. The idea of, if it looks complicated, it must be powerful. You know, I'm glad to see that go by the wayside because it's just not true.
Yes.
Maybe it was at some point, but it isn't anymore. Now power can be hidden, and instead of showing a menu with 30 items, maybe you should show them the relevant items to the path that they're on at the very moment. You know, and so it's like there's power to that, because now you're not confused and using your cycles. You're going right through and doing what you got to do. So it's great. It's great seeing that trend continue.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons why I'm curious to see how these voice interfaces continue to advance because, you know, the one thing that's held back, even with all the effort, you know, on UX, is like you get into these large marketing platforms. And part of the problem is they're just large. There's just
Yeah,
so much in there
it's true.
that when you come into it, unless if you've really gotten like a full training on all this stuff, it can be hard to find what you're looking for. I mean, it's just this is hard. I say this for
Do
every
you have one? Do
software.
you have one of those evil listening devices in your home?
I do. I now have
Do.
one in almost every room at this
Do you
point.
really? I know you're not concerned about like Amazon listening to you fight with your dog. It sends you like dog training tips in the mail. It's like, my dog, by the way, is a puppy, and you forget when you get a new puppy how much the first one was, how much work it was. So yeah, some words would be exchanged. But so you're kind of just buying into I mean, it's here, right?
Yeah, and again, I don't want to poo-poo anyone's concerns on the privacy side, because I think there are real serious questions here that we haven't
Agreed.
answered.
Yeah.
And so it's a personal choice for me to feel like, my interest in experimenting with the technology is I'm willing to make that risk.
Right.
But I
Fair
also
enough.
completely understand that, yeah, there's probably a large segment of consumers out there who know until they get some better assurance, of what these things are going to be, I don't want them. But I think where I was going with this was, in the context of even just a voice interface off of your computer or your tablet or
Sure.
whatever it is I think, man, we're not quite there. But, when we get to a place where for these larger marketing platforms, they have voice interfaces to it, just think how simple all that could
Yeah.
become. It's like, instead of figuring out how do I find the report for what the campaign performance was for email versus our
Right.
retargeting, I don't have to go hunting around menus. I just tell it, here's what I want. Find it for me, and
Yeah.
have it come back and give it to me.
I could imagine staring at your marketing automation platform being like, where's email? And it's like, bloop, bloop, bloop. Maybe the paperclip comes back. And it's like, here's the email. you know, that would be crazy. But you're right. The
Clippy's
sky's the limit on
revenge.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Paperclip revenge. Like, I'm back. So, so this is awesome. And I think I could talk to you about tech forever. But one thing I'd love to ask you is really like, who are you? Where did you come from? How did you become this intersection between tech and marketing and sort of at the forefront and observing it all and seeing the changes? Were you best friends with a computer chip when you were 4? Like, take us back to
Yeah.
little Scott days. Like, how did this all come about? What's your story?
It's clearly a laboratory experiment that went horribly wrong,
Yes,
right?
totally.
So it's interesting. So, my parents ran an advertising agency, a
No
small agency
kidding.
of their own. But then, as a kid, I got into computers. They definitely encouraged that. And then, at an early age, I actually became an entrepreneur, where I was writing multiplayer computer games.
No
And so I
way.
got into this mode where I was actually not only writing the games, but I was working with a company to help market them, if you will. And so, kind of, as this stuff came into, the explosion of the web, I always found myself at this intersection of essentially being a product guy or a, technology leader, but having an affinity for marketing, and increasingly got really excited about using technology to solve marketing challenges.
Yeah.
Then, yeah, over time, that turned into something that, I grew a web agency that provided that. I created a SaaS business, in the mid 2000s that had a product for interactive content for marketers. And just as this kept going, the thing that I found most fascinating all along was, again, this collision, this convergence
Yeah.
between the tech world and the marketing world. And so I started the Chief MarTech blog as just a labor of love. Just, I think for a few years there were maybe like 50 other people who, could have, oh, hey, tech and marketing, that's cool.
Right.
But yeah, about whatever that was, 2013, 2014, somewhere in there, it suddenly something switched and people suddenly realized that, okay, wow, this is a way for marketing to open up a whole new horizon of possibilities for what it can do, and to take marketing beyond a role of marcom into something that really is much more deeply engaged in how the business works with customers throughout their entire life cycle. So,
Wow.
yeah, it just sort of is rolled up from there. But
So tell me, multiplayer games. Like I loved hacking around with Apple IIe's to make single player games, but multiplayer that adds an element. That's another layer on top.
yeah, it was
Were they
fun.
like
So
adventure
I got
games?
into that, in the '80s. They were dial-up BBS services, and I worked with a company that created a multi-user BBS, so people would simultaneously be on the same system.
Wow.
That I know this is like, the pre-runner to Facebook, because they could
Yeah.
chat with each other,
Yeah.
and then you could write games, and they could interact with each other in these games. It was
Wow.
incredibly nerdy and fun. So.
Well, sometimes they say nerds have the most fun.
Oh,
I don't know.
I'm with that camp.
Me too. So, it's interesting, from there, I found out about you back in my younger years, with Ion, right? With Live Ball. That and
Live ball. All right.
remember that?
Woo-hoo.
Yeah. So I was at EF at the time,
Oh, right, right,
and
right.
we bought Live Ball, and it was
Well,
awesome. And I
thank
was
you.
using it. Yeah, no, it's like we were like an internal agency, and so this was before. I mean, this was at the forefront of landing pages, at least in my exposure. And funny story, actually, Christopher O'Donnell and I were at Transparent Language prior to that,
Oh,
and
it's awesome.
man,
I
wouldn't it
love
be
these intersections.
right? Wouldn't it be great if we could have a way to make, because we were selling language software at like a different, like 80 different languages, and some people want free language learning, some people want fun language learning, some people want fast, right? So we wanted landing pages for different ones. And so he's brilliant, obviously. And he basically created some things like that. Then when I went to, EF, it was like, oh yeah, here we go. Now we program tracks. It was, actually there should be more of that. But I recall, like, we actually took our audience and are you a teacher or are you a student? And if they're a teacher, we went down one path, and then eventually got them to fill out the form. And then if the student went another way, we showed them different things, different audience, and it was a blast. I mean, that was when I was first started to get exposed to you and all the thought leadership.
Oh, well, I'm so excited about that. Yeah, that was a really fun venture that we did there. And I think even today, right? I mean, this is still it's
Well,
funny.
20
Something
years
that
it looks like.
yeah,
2
you
decades.
expect yeah, would be further along, but yeah, it's it's still taking most marketers time to realize that this doesn't have to be like a one-way static medium here, that
Right.
you can create these interactive paths, and essentially you are getting prospects to volunteer the most important information.
Right.
Getting their contact information, filling out a form, all right, you need that at some point to
At
reach
some
these
point,
people.
yeah.
But that isn't really the most important thing. The most important thing is to figure out, like, okay, well, who are they? What's the problem they're trying to solve? How can
Yeah.
I match them, with the right sort of offer that's going to be really relevant to their needs? And yeah, I'm still excited about what's possible with that. So.
Totally. Now, how do you have one of those things in Harry Potter where Hermione twists the thing and time goes back? And because okay, so you've got the Chief MarTech, thought leadership, the MarTech conference, and VP of platform ecosystem at HubSpot, right? Growing leaps and bounds. How do you do it all? Time travel? What's your secret?
Yeah, I don't play golf.
Oh, right. Oh, there you go.
Yeah,
Answer
yeah, it's
solved.
yeah, it's for better and worse.
Right.
I mean, the Chief Martech stuff has always been, like I won't say quite a hobby, but it's
Yeah,
like
kind of like a
it's that
passion
labor of
project.
love.
Yeah.
It's like one of
Yeah.
the things where, like, and that's one of the reasons why I actually enjoy not doing it professionally.
Right.
Because if I was a professional like publisher, it's like I'd be like, okay, well, every week I've got to publish
Yeah.
something, and it doesn't matter if I've got a great idea or not. I just need to
Right.
publish something, and by being in this mode where, like, I do this because I love it. That if I have a great idea and I want to write it up, I do. If a week goes by and I'm like, yeah, I don't really have anything to say. I don't feel guilty. I don't feel like, oh
Yes.
my goodness, I'm not going to feed my family if I don't like publish something.
Right. And like pander to the ads. So people try to close things and more things pop open. You're right. Some things are best, in that passion zone. And then, keep that other stuff out of it so you can have like a pure pursuit for sure. And then what are you doing at HubSpot now? What are the different aspects? What are you tackling?
Yeah, so I mean, HubSpot is one of these companies that's going through this transition where when they started, the vision was largely that we will be an all-in-one solution.
Sure.
And certainly for the first 10 years, that's actually a lot of what they did. I mean, for a lot of marketers, what they needed, they could get all within HubSpot.
Yeah.
But the reality is, I mean, the world just continues to expand, and there are just so many different tools and technologies and things that any individual business wants to connect together.
Right.
That the future of HubSpot really has to be this open platform that, yes, we'll give you a wide collection of capabilities out of the box with our own hubs, but really any other thing that you want to plug in. And if you prefer this other solution, for this, rather than our own, swap it in. Like, if you want to customize something by extending on our APIs your own little special app, by all means, here's the documentation, the tutorials. We'd love to see
Right.
that happen. And so this is, again, this is to the credit of, the co-founders of HubSpot, Brian Halligan and Dharmesh Shah. They are, have been very passionate about HubSpot making that transformation.
Right.
And so I'm one of many people who are working at the company to just, help make that more real.
I'm finally connecting our conversation about the citizens, our conversation about the platform. You're the platform leader, HubSpot. You're an important guy.
No, I am one of several people who is, in this
Okay, but
process,
you're an important guy. Like this is the way. This is where they need to go, right? This is where HubSpot needs to go. Salesforce is there. Continue to grow the platform. Anyone else that wants to play, they gotta. Like Marketo got acquired, but they got.
They were headed in that direction too. In fact, they were one of the first to really push.
Because they bought Visible, I think.
Yeah.
So they're
and Adobe. Actually, even the rest of the Adobe ecosystem, they've made great strides in the past couple years of like really opening up more APIs, taking an ecosystem-oriented approach.
Right.
I mean, I think basically every major company in this space has realized they can't go it alone. They can't do it all. There's just too many things happening in too many directions, and to win this game, you really need to provide the sanity, at the center of all this, for marketers, but give them that flexibility and that freedom to really extend their own custom marketing stack, in whatever special way they want.
Absolutely. Well, this has been incredible. What are some of the ways people can connect with you? If you're okay with that, like
LinkedIn, absolutely,
Twitter.
Yeah, LinkedIn is good. Twitter, I'm Chief MarTech without the H at the end.
Without the H, baby. That's it. Got to own it, right?
Yeah, embrace it.
I once tried out CrossFit, and the very first workout I ever did in CrossFit was called Sarah No H, right? So you're Chief MarTech No H, man. That just
all right.
It is. And
no H, no hype, no heartache, no
no heart. Oh, I love that. That's good. See, branding. I like it.
Yeah, work on
marketing. Okay, so Chief MarTech with no H on Twitter. The website Chief MarTech. LinkedIn is probably a great place, and obviously, marketing tech conferences. We'll have to remind folks about that for sure.
Yeah.
Any other shout outs?
I think I feel like I've shouted myself out.
Yeah, right. Well, have you looked at the clock? Time is just like warped by.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me for this.
Yeah.
I love this conversation.
Yeah, it's fun. We could do this all day. So maybe we'll check back in a couple of quarters and see what's up and what you're seeing, how many got dropped this year and how many are coming on and all that good stuff.
That sounds great.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Scott. Appreciate it. For everyone listening, if you learned something here, and there's no way you didn't, because I have like notes out to was right? Then share this with someone, because you got to get this info out to them, and you become a thought leader sharing it with them. So make that happen, and we will see you all next time. This has been the Hardcore Marketing Show. Bam.